Even though Portugal and Spain were once part of a union, and Spain invaded Portugal during the Napoleonic period, the Portuguese lands were never fully conquered and annexed into the Spanish kingdom. Portugal's only mainland neighbor is Spain, a much larger country. Centuries ago, Spain was one of the world's major powers, expanding into the New World in Asia, with large overseas colonies protected by its formidable armies and navies. Given Spain's historical power and its smaller neighbor Portugal being cornered on the Atlantic coast, one might wonder why Portugal was never conquered by Spain. To answer this, we must delve into history. The Iberian Peninsula was known as Hispania, a name given by the Romans. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the territory was taken over by the Visigoths, who eventually ruled the entire peninsula. However, this rule was temporary, as their new home would be conquered by a new force emerging far away. Starting as a religious movement in the hot desert of Arabia, Islam spread rapidly, mainly due to early military successes against the Eastern Romans and Persians. Arab dynasties expanded quickly, reaching the shores of the Atlantic Ocean by the end of the 7th century. Within these empires, Islam was embraced by more and more people, becoming the dominant religion in the caliphates. It is believed that Hispania, a former Roman province with a deep-rooted Latin language and culture, saw Muslim general Tariq ibn Ziyad land in Gibraltar on April 30th, 711. By the end of his campaign, most of the peninsula was under Islamic rule. Islam had been present in Hispania since the Umayyad conquest in the 8th century, and many in the region embraced Islam. Muslims in the Iberian Peninsula, called Al-Andalus, included Arabs, Berbers, and locals who accepted the religion. Even after the Umayyad dynasty collapsed, parts of the peninsula were held by Muslim dynasties for centuries, with a Muslim majority more prevalent in the Spanish part than in the Portuguese part of the land. Portugal, being the first name on the Iberian Peninsula, emerged earlier than Spain and formed as a kingdom in 1128. This occurred after an important battle led by Afonso Henriques, who proclaimed himself King of Portugal in the first half of the 12th century. This was part of the Reconquista. He was recognized in 1143 by Alfonso VII, King of Leon, and in 1179 by the Pope. What we know as Spain began with the union of the crowns of Castile and Aragon in 1479, although it wasn't until 1516 that they had a single unified king. An interesting historical point is the War of Castilian Succession, where Portugal supported Joanna, wife of King Alfonso V of Portugal, and Aragon supported Isabel, wife of Ferdinand, the future King Ferdinand II. This was crucial because Isabella was recognized as Queen of Castile. If Joanna had won, Portugal and Castile might have united, leaving Aragon as an independent kingdom. Until then, Hispania referred exclusively to the Iberian Peninsula. The Constitution of 1876 adopted the name Spain for the first time. Portugal, Castile, and Aragon were allies in the Reconquista, reclaiming land from the Muslim Moors and expanding south of the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal's reconquest was fully achieved by 1249, while Castile's was completed in 1492. Following Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Caribbean in 1492, both states began acquiring territory in the New World. The 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas resulted in Portugal acquiring its most important colony, Brazil. In 1578, King Sebastian of Portugal died in the Battle of Alcácer Quibir against the Moroccans and Turks. With no heirs, he was succeeded by his great-uncle Henry of Portugal, who also died without heirs, triggering a succession crisis. The main claimants to the Portuguese throne were Philip of Spain and Anthony, Prior of Crado. After the Spanish victory in the War of Portuguese Succession, Philip of Spain was crowned king in 1581, beginning the Iberian Union. This personal union lasted almost 60 years, generating a decline in the Portuguese Empire. The union ended in 1640 with the Portuguese Restoration War, which re-established the Portuguese dynasty under the Braganza. During the 18th century wars, fought by major powers to maintain the European balance of power, Spain and Portugal often found themselves on opposite sides. Portugal, aligned with Great Britain due to their long-standing alliance, and Spain, allied with France through the Bourbon family compact, were typical adversaries. In 1762, during the 7 Years' War, Spain's invasion of Portugal failed. In 1777, a conflict over South American borders resulted in the War of the Oranges in 1801, where Spanish forces, influenced by France, invaded Portugal. This was a precursor to the Peninsular Wars, leading to the Treaty of Badajoz, the loss of Portuguese territory, particularly Olivenza, and the complete invasion of the Iberian Peninsula by Spanish and French forces in 1807. The King of Spain and his French allies successfully invaded Portugal, but the French then took over both countries, overthrowing the King of Spain and forcing the Portuguese royal family to escape to Brazil. Spain and Portugal subsequently became allies for the first time in centuries. Allied with the British Army, they expelled the French by 1813 after the long Peninsular War. The conflict severely damaged the Spanish and Portuguese economies and altered their reputations. Both lost their American colonies shortly after the Peninsular War, weakening their global power. Internal problems and independence wars led to the loss of much of the New World in the following decades. After Napoleon's fall, Portugal and Spain nearly went to war several times in the early 19th century. Portugal and Spain had been rival sea powers since the 14th century. Portugal, initially exploring the Atlantic, discovered that Africa was the Arab world's major toll source via camel caravans across the Sahara. Despite their rivalry, both countries focused on their overseas lands during the Age of Discovery. Wealth came from abroad, with new goods from Asia and the Americas flooding European markets. The huge intake of American gold was crucial for Spain's economy. To maintain these trade deals, Spain had to defend its overseas possessions. From the 19th century, some plans for a union between Portugal and Spain emerged. Some tried to spread the idea of Iberism in Portugal, proposing 7 confederate republics, 5 in Spain, and Lusitania Ulterior. Both the First and Second Spanish republics had plans to invade Portugal or create an Iberian republic or union. The First Spanish Republic even designed a federal constitution to include Portugal. The Second Spanish Republic's plan to invade Portugal during the Spanish Civil War failed as well. Portugal, a mostly hilly and not very attractive country to conquer centuries ago, saw some attempts, but never full success. Many factors, including a lack of large interest in this land, a focus on colonies, Portuguese diplomacy, decisions affecting the Iberian Union or the previous Union of Castile and Aragon, Spanish internal problems, and other external factors contributed to Portugal not being conquered by Spain. If you want to see more videos, be sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell button to be notified when a new video is uploaded.